A very warm good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, a great day today to be talking to you all through this summit. As we are witnessing this 2020, almost lived half of it completely virtual. So this has become the new norm now with the new technology that is enabling us to live that vision. We now can be completely certain that digital transformation was not just an add-on value to the organizations, but it was a much needed value that organizations were lucky to think through before this pandemic. And somehow the organizations who have thought it well are doing things exactly in a smoother way they have been doing so far before the pandemic. So going digitally virtual for them is not a challenge, but they were more than happy to think it through and leverage it to the core. So technology is undergoing this rapid change daily. The way we deliver values, be the key enablers when we talk about it, be it the platform or the way development and operations were carried out independently, were some things that a lot of industries were thinking through in a much broader fashion. But what happened is, since 2010 and beyond, there was a significant amount of investment and think tank pools making it much more reality. So it was not just transformation on theory. They were actualizing this whole transformation components one by one. It started off with e-commerce, and now it's almost virtually in every industry that we see. So everybody, be it banking, financial services, or tourism, or energy and utilities, all are onboarded with this acceleration, and they are in certain shape and form so far. And everybody is onto their road of digital transformation, and they are looking it well. What this pandemic has done is that it has given the food for thought of making it much more refined and much more of a key practice within the organizations to have. The beauty of being part of such an accelerated transformation, and us, the ones who are driving it firsthand, I think every one of us should be very ecstatic about it, because we are the ones who are the key change agents of this transformation, and our contribution to it is going to be phenomenal in the years to come. What fundamentally I believe is a great piece of enabling this entire transformation is the transformation of the key cores. The cores like platforms, the way we operate on platforms, the way we deliver values using these platforms. Whatever we do, be it the apps, be it the centers of business logics that we build out on these platforms to make it run at scale, on demand, and make our whole business function run smoothly and seamlessly. These build outs are the cores, and with that, the transformation is just going faster and faster. And right now we are living that dream of making it not just at a BU level or maybe more of a independent divisional level. We are making this change across the organization. We are moving to that era where these models are going to be the key constructs of delivering values that every organization think through technology. So who am I? Well, I'm Shantanu, and I work with this IT industry for now close to a decade and more. It's been a wonderful journey so far. I've been handling transformation day in, day out for a lot of key channel clients that I work with in the financial services sector. I'm a certified solutions architect on the cloud and a DevSecOps coach, and I love my trade. The reason I love my trade is because I'm very much happy to be a part of a journey for a lot of organizations where in the days to come, assets are going to get built out on top of the code that I deliver. It gives me much of a satisfaction in building up a whole portfolio of digital transformation workflows and assets for any organizations that I'm a part of, because that's going to get used by generations to come. So I believe most of you on this call are also the key change agents on digital transformation and a lot of key enablers, that it brings along. So you must be very ecstatic about that as well. With that thought, let's deep dive into the key topic that we have for this summit, no ops. So what basically is no ops? Is that fundamentally a thing? Is that a practical framework? How do we achieve it? These were the key questions I always had when I tried to build out my white paper on what exactly is no ops and how is it bringing the disruption. So what fundamentally is operations and how do we do it daily was something I was very much happy to learn the nitty-gritties about day in, day out. But the place where I started taking a step back and maybe actualizing more is that will there be a market where this operations can completely go, and this is not going to be a zone where development and operations goes hand in hand, but more of a market where development is the core of delivering values and operations is just going to enable that. So how will that market be? With that thought, I started doing my white paper build out, and I came to a state to understand what exactly this no ops fundamentally means. So let's quickly go into the outline and talk about what we are going to cover today. So the outline that I have for this discussion is predominantly a quick wireframe on how this whole overall landscape of IT is changing. We know, within this IT landscape, there are development boards and ways of doing development. There are operational boards and ways of doing operations. But it has significantly got changed in the way culturally it was perceived. And there were a few reserved way of doing activities, maybe auditing or maybe insights generation or maybe governance and compliance, which were only scoped to larger organizations. Now, with the advent of new age tech and enabler platforms, this could be available on demand to a lot of small organizations who wanted to be compliant on these things as well, or leverage these models of insight generations as well. So how do we do that? That's something we will be able to understand when we talk through the shift of how this landscape is changing. And following that, there are two key snapshots that are parked on the slide, which majorly talks about how transformation of IT landscape is happening today. So in terms of what all transformation buckets do we see in major, with all the transformation that we have seen so far, and how these buckets have come into existence. In terms of the key stats, how this bucketed transformation pools have given us the ROI that we have built out. And is it actualized the way we have planned to deliver digital transformation, or is it just more about an investment which is yet to leverage some benefit? How are we seeing the on-ground transformation? Something to live up to our plans. So that being said, the fourth construct I have in this outline is more about the process of unification. So what started off as a transformation bit is that a lot of transformations of capabilities were done independently, one by one. So be it platform transformation, be it operations transformation, be it the way development transformation happens, these were done once in silos and independently. But when we talk about an overall digital transformation footprint of an organization, it's more about stitching back these individual constructs together and achieve an organizational roadmap of digital transformation. How do we do that? What exactly are the processes of unification that organizations typically follow? And this will give us a wireframe of how exactly the transformation is happening across the world in all the organizations. And where does no ops come in? And that's the space where we're entering into a model of how no ops fits in this whole scheme of things. So on that specific context, how exactly is the disruption that no ops brought? So who were the key disruptors? Who were the channel companies who has brought this whole disruption into existence, who has made the so-called theory of transformation livable, more practical? And how have they done it? What was their intent? What was the thought of making it happen? From there, I'll be pulling out a golden principle block. It's more of a framework wherein we have tried to summarize what were the key build-outs in terms of achieving a journey to no ops for these companies, and how can we leverage a model of a no ops way of doing business. So what are the key ingredients that we can bake in, or maybe start building out independently to a stage where we cover all the checkpoints to go into a no ops stage. And from there, how do we roll it out at an industrial level? So from a point where we have done our basics correctly in terms of radically transforming operations to a stage where we roll it out across the organization, how do we go to that stage? So a basic construct of getting the lay of the land is what I'm going to talk about on these constructs. And at the end, it's more about the future of no ops. So this is where we will understand how the traditional way of doing operations on platforms or delivering applications on platforms was versus what it's going to be for the future, which is going to be the key takeaway for the session of how is this operational transformation going to give us a very great clarity in terms of leveraging it across the organization. So moving on from this outline, let's quickly get into the overall landscape shift phase. Okay, so how do we perceive operations? I think we all, so far, in certain form or capacity, have been a part of this transformation. So we get this slide correct. What we do is either of these two buckets. When we talk about the way development is transformed or the way operations is transformed, we get the wireframe correct. Since the last 2 decades, what we saw is that there was a huge change in the way development is perceived, culturally as well as in practically. So the way software delivery life cycle was changing for the last 10, 15 years, from a waterfall-based model to an agile-based model. Why was it getting changed? Or maybe in terms of an architectural component, the 3-tier, 4-tier architecture that we used to build up was more constructed into a singular block of monolith, which is now getting broken down into a microservice-based design. And why exactly is it happening? How are the tight couplings getting loosely coupled through API centricity and API-based solutioning design approach? And with the advent of modernizing the whole framework of development, in this new technologies like Perl, Python, how is it coming into picture? So what we kind of summarize from the way the SDLCs or the architectures, the way we used to do integrations and all were changing, is that transformation by the nature of doing it was well thought through. So it was always a problem with having a pre-planned way of doing software delivery models using waterfall mechanisms. So we wanted to have a model which gives us more flexibility in terms of incorporating changes when we do need it on the real time. That gave a transformation backlog of the whole SDLC, and that's where Agile built in. Similarly, the way we define our application stacks tightly on a monolith architecture was much more tougher when we talk about bringing a new change in the whole application portfolio. But what happened is when we started breaking it down into individual service-based models, the microservices enabled us to make the upgrades and changes independently to the core services, and it was a phenomenal thing. So these were the key constructs where in the world of development, it was kind of very, very obvious that we have to do development using these modernized models in order to achieve a transformation in the way development is done. Now, moving to operations, what we see here is in operations, the way we used to deliver values through our platforms is now changing. So the whole platform got a drastic change when we moved to a managed CSP-based model. So with the advent of cloud, be it a hybrid cloud solution or a container-based cloud solution, what happened is now organizations were not that much worried about building and maintaining platforms across the globe on their own, but they could simply leverage already, quote unquote, build out platforms by the CSPs on demand when their businesses needed that. that was a phenomenal activity of getting platforms on demand at least when we kind of need it on any specific region and with the same capability and same performance. So that was a very drastic change in terms of how platform acceptance of transformation was happening. When we talk about the delivery models, it was not just about only the platforms getting changed, but the delivery to the platforms was also well thought through. So it could not be more manual and individual ways of doing configurations and deployments onto these platforms, but there should be a tight, robust, and resilient way of delivering assets to the platform. And that's where the momentum on DevSecOps or DevOps in earlier space came into picture. How do we deliver assets properly, securely, and build out a resilient model of doing this time to time, again and again in a repeatable fashion? Was one of the key enablers of getting into a platform which was maintained by somebody, because the delivery model was maintained and owned by the organization. So all this were coming up in certain form or shape independently. It was giving us much better way of delivering operational values. So what we can summarize from the first two blocks is three key takeaways. Number one, it was always there. This transformation, the requirement was always there, if I may correct it. So it was always a challenge to confine the way we do development using the limitations we had earlier. So modernized way of doing development was the next big thing, and people were already onto it from a very long time, maybe 15 to 18 years down the lane. What we see is this is going to get revamped into something more better. But this is all a journey. So this was always well thought through, and this had to be here. In terms of the way operations was done, it was always, so the second point is the operations model of organizations needed a transformation, because it always is a cost that the organizations bear. So the lesser it is, the better it is to perform for the organization in terms of bringing more business values. So that's how this was getting, onto the road of transformation, and a much needed thing. The third part that I've parked in between is the limited control. So a lot of insights that we have on the data models, or be it governance, be it the scopes of generating automated insights, what we saw is that this were very much limited to only key big organizations who wanted to do this and had the capability, quote unquote, to do it. Now, with the advent of scalable platforms by CSPs, these offerings could be integrated on the platform, and anybody leveraging the platform on demand can access to these kind of scoped capabilities. So it's something which I fundamentally believe was a very big overhead for companies if they even think of consuming insights built out on data warehouse, data lakes, or maybe governance and compliance, key structure wireframe build-outs. Because just in order to consume it, they have to build out a huge platform with all these capabilities updated, running every time. But with this as a service, it was something that every startups or maybe every organizations were able to channel it from day zero. So they had no worry of building it out and then consuming it, rather than it's just something available to vote and consume it when we need it. So it's more of a service utility thing. So this is how the whole portfolio of landscape in the way we do development, the way we do carry out operations was changing over the last decade. And this is all phenomenal. So we kind of understood the lay of the land, but when we talk about bucketing it, this is where the major transformations are happening in IT. So how exactly do we bucket this whole transformation practices? So fundamentally, there are top three buckets. There could be some more, but a lot of transformation in IT is happening on these three zones, be it the platform, be it the development, and the delivery. What happens is, the first part, platform, the way we used to construct the platform, the way configurations were done on platform, or the way provisioning was done, it was more of a manual in nature. So does the orchestration. But with the advent of governed and managed platforms, there was a huge requirement of having utility-based configurations as well. So the infrastructure as a service model, be it the platform as a service model, these were drastically customized as per clients. And in order to do it every time again and again, it was much of a mundane work, which was not something great. So what happened is something called as infrastructure as a code came into picture. So the entire configuration, entire setup and provisioning and orchestration could be configured and templated, so that later point of time, if the organization wants to build out on-demand similar capabilities on similar environments, they can simply fork out those templates, change few minor parameters, and build out a similar scale of environment in no time. So this whole infrastructure as a code asset was enabling the transformation of platforms. So the clouds and all came into the picture, but how we leverage clouds at scale and when we need it, this was giving us much more momentum, and that too in a resilient way. So the advent of cloud and all was a great contributor to transforming the platforms. But the way we consume or configure our platforms with the infrastructure as a code model was something phenomenal in building out a platform transformation bucket. The second part is application transformation. This I think we are comfortable about, because a lot of us working on development are very much secure about the way development is getting modernized, or the process of doing development is getting transformed. So how the microservice-based design is enabling us to do better ways in developing application sets, how the APIs are helping this integration features and making my whole application code lightweight, how the loose coupling has baked in a fundamental application architecture and making it more scalably robust, how security is getting baked in by the way we design the code. So all these cycles are now changing, and it's changing at a very fast pace. So all in all, the way application transformation is going through, this is something that we are witnessing on the ground, and this will maybe in the years to come, it's going to get fundamentally into a different space altogether. So there's a huge transformation happening on the development space of transformation. Now, when we talk about the third bucket, it's more about the way we deliver these transformations. We have got the applications transformed, we have got the target platforms transformed, but how do we deliver point A to point B, these assets? This is where the delivery transformation scope, or maybe the DevSecOps transformation scope, which is how are our build and release agents configured, the tool chains, the pipelines, the unification model of doing it across environments, all these things. How is that governed? How is that maintained? Is this something every organization started thinking through? Because it was a manual, I'll repeat that, it was a manual functionality practice. So if there is a pipeline and more of an assembly line kind of a function where everything that we deliver it across points is much more controlled and governed, this is going to be wonderful, because the lesser manual intervention gives us more autonomous controls on how we maintain the whole pipeline, and it's more better in terms of maintainability, so that we can reuse our thinking hats and building out something more meaningful. So these were the top three buckets which were driving this transformations, and with more and more deep dive onto it, we kind of understand how these bucketed transformations and the agendas of it have built out the key stats that we are going to see on the next slide. So what we saw is that, be it platform or be it operations or be it application modernization, any CIO function to evaluate transformation focuses more on the three key constructs. It's the total cost of ownership, the growth efficiency that this model has got, and the resiliency on the continuing business that it will bring. This is the success criteria definition to measure. And what we saw from the key highlights of these numbers that you see on the screen, most of these key highlights indicate that we are much accelerated in the track of transformation, be it the way we improve productivity, be it the way we define efficiency, be it the way we reduce our downtimes. Everything has got a significant benefit. So these numbers on the screen kind of back the claim that the way we are actually doing the transformation through these key bucketed principles that we just saw is something reaping out a very good benefit. And in terms of an whole organizational digital transformation footprint, these are the must-haves. Unless and until an organization figures out a break-even plan or maybe an ROI in terms of how they're leveraging their investment on transformation, they will not deep dive into it. Or maybe they're reaping out a quick TCO benefit in a couple of months or a year. They will be kind of skeptical about doing that level of investment. But what we witnessed is that it's very quick in giving the benefit, and the way we channeled these transformations made it much better. So in terms of building out the confidence of the leadership, they were much better aligned by seeing these numbers on the floor, that yes, this transformation is actually something that they always needed, and this is helping them getting more digital in the way they do business. So this was something which has, maybe if I may put it into a layman's term, made the organizations live the plan of going digital in an accelerated fashion. Now it's not just about thinking, it's about seeing that this is what they have given you, and you accelerate your adoption in a much faster pace so that you can reap out the best quickly. Now, moving on to the process of how this all connect dots. So we spoke about platforms, we spoke about infrastructures and the configurations of the assets, we spoke about applications and the delivery models. But what we see is that on a wireframe, the build out of key core capabilities is more about leveraging all these one-on-one channels independently. And what happens is, when we start building out all of these capabilities one by one, we kind of are on a track of building out the core capabilities. But a product does not have only the core capabilities. It has to be well thought through for a full build out. So when we talk about a full build out, we should always be in a stage where all these transformations should also be a part of the whole product build out. Along with it, the add-on parameters, which comes as a segmented rollout feature. Now, the product is ready. The capabilities of the product is open. But how do we roll it out specifically for a segment that we intend to do? So that phase comes out in the full build out feature. And when that part is constructed, that's where we add the commercial blend to it in terms of the whole pricing aspect and the feature cataloging aspect for a build out of customer base that this product is meant for. So all in all, what you can see from this whole flow, what you can see from this whole flow is that the integration of the transformation levels happen much earlier in the whole unification process. And because it happens in a much earlier stage and build out of the core capability, it gives us much better confidence in putting the product across segments, across regions, and across a global commercial scale at a quick pace. So that's how the unification build out gives a digital transformation check mark for any products that the organizations put forward to in the market. And fundamentally, I believe that this is something we all will be doing at certain stage, maybe much in a middle stage where almost the whole products are built out, the whole capabilities are ready. But the way we talk about shifting left across our value chain, be it operations, be it the infrastructure, be it the platform, this whole unification also, if that is shifted left, and the way we build out the whole construct of a product, this gives us much more confidence in our whole product posture. So this is how the unification is derived, and this is how onto a roadmap of build out for a product to a specific customer this should be. Now we enter into the space which we have been sharing out through is NoOps. How exactly NoOps has come into existence, and with the mention of NoOps, I could not leave out the key disrupting organizations that has brought it into existence. So be it Netflix, be it Uber, be it Airbnb, or Tesla, these were the key disrupting or maybe if I may put it, key change agent organizations who have coined this word. So how kind of did, how did they do it? What we saw is that all these organizations fundamentally are development driven organizations. So they always had one option ready, that the minimal possible ops will help them achieve more productive time for doing more development and building out more business functionalities for the clients that they work for. So having a development driven mindset gives them a focus on building out critical business functionality and worrying less about a lot of operational level work. So maintaining uptimes, managing servers, upgrades, the firefighting works. So they don't need to worry about this, or maybe put a huge chunk of their operational cost just for something which could be offloaded to the maximum extent. So what they did is that they underlined a wireframe of what exactly they need out of their whole offering. So all these that you see in terms of building out a flexible architecture. The architecture should be that flexible that it should not be confined on any specific platform or any specific technology, which makes them in a much bad posture if they completely decide to change the whole piece tomorrow. So in terms of a growth, all these organizations, Netflix and Uber, they have a hyper growth model on a 24-hour cycle. So how do they visually, how do they visualize this growth? How exactly is the elastic nature of the platform they deploy their applications on? So this all key constructs give us the wireframe of how continuous innovation was the key element for a company like Netflix or Uber or Airbnb to leverage platforms to do operations. The one thing they were fundamentally very clear about is the least possible ops. So I don't need 40% of my staff doing operational work. I need maybe 5% of them to begin with, and just all 95% should focus more on building out more and more key business capabilities so that I can derive more and more business and cover more and more great use cases. So a development-driven mindset was the key thing, and a wireframe built out on this model helped them disrupt the market. So they understood the requirements very clearly. They built out the whole new way of leveraging their development-driven model and building out how to live in a zone of having least possible ops is needed. So that's one of the key things. So what happened next is, after they have defined the way they wanted to bring development-driven culture of doing business, they were fundamentally clear on what they wanted to do next is to minimalize the operations model. And if that's the case, that's where they will have to identify a key golden rule to do this. And that's where we go into the key golden principle stage. So they have started building out a hyper automation culture, developing a platform agnostic model where everything that they deploy as a part of the development asset should be platform agnostic. They have to foresee and visualize their whole scalability and high availability approaches. So what I very much liked about their whole cycle of defining the key principle constructs is, don't let the tooling part be a scope to your business solution. Anything that they have right now in existence, the way we do operations, the way we consume operations, or the way we consume platforms, any asset, whatever we have is something we should not be confined about. If that does not meet our development-driven mindset, let's reinvent it. And that's what Netflix, does daily. It challenges the way they see platforms, they see operations, and build out a better thing. Facebook does it daily. So all this, technology marvel companies, they invest a lot of time in just focusing on their core model, which is build out a better working world for our applications to be consumed by our customers. And whatever is there to leverage it. If it is not there, let's build out a better version of what is there from the base, and then it will help us to maybe define the use case that we have thought through. So they don't have any limitation in what they have to consume. If that's not there, they'll build it out. So that's how you reach to a model where if you had a vision of cutting down operations to almost 90% of the capacity, you have achieved that. So, and Netflix has done it. Now they have almost, or Uber, they have shifted almost 90% of their operational work to the development pod. So the developers, through the models of self-service and everything, they can do it on their own. And the hyper-automation culture at these organizations are helping us achieve that. So that's a great thing. What happened is, so if you move on from the golden principle stage to making it applicable on an industrial scale, what you see is that these are the key constructs of any any way of doing development and carrying out that development across the environments. So what used to happen maybe 15, 20 years down the line is that when we talk about development, kind of setting up the environments or setting up the whole clusters of softwares, provisioning, orchestration, customizations, these were all manual. Same goes with the build and test culture. So how you define your build environments, how you do your build and how you fetch up these things, how you define your test cases, all these things, all these blocks of doing build and test, releases, or maybe operating, these were majorly manual, if not maybe semi-automated. And this was limiting the agility of delivering our applications, and it had a hard cap of having these things into existence first, then doing our application development on top of these, and then delivering it to the end audience. So it had a time cap, it had a capacity cap, all these things, and on top of it, it had a manual limitation of expertise. But how did it actually change over time? So what we understood is, the key. So if you see, there's a blend of operations on all these four buckets in terms of doing configurations, doing setting up, doing the wireframe build out. Everything had operations to a major extent. So operations should be outcome driven. It should not be a thing which needs to be done repetitively for all the times. It should be completely driven on the outcome, which was not happening. So we had to deliver a value for a customer with an application, but because we had limitations of getting the operational work done on a specific time, it was just getting delayed. So that's not how outcomes are driven. So by seeing it from right to left, what we understood is that we'll have to rethink the way we do operations, and that's where a lot of automation or hyper automation works, came into picture. So everything that has to do with the process or the workflow were well thought through. We understood that there is a need of building out automation practice across these blocks and doing all these activities in an automated way. But when we did it, it was majorly experience driven. What we understood from that all the use cases and everything that comes from an experience level were still scoped. It has to be analytically driven. So all that we have done so far, all the data that we have got through our use cases, tickets, issues, they should be leveraged to build out a whole automation wireframe of our own use cases. And that's how the analytical automation engines, the AI ops and all came into picture. It's continuously evolving. All these models of self-heal and getting an automated way of doing this development, build, test, release, operate, were built out on our own use cases. And that's how everything that we do build on these has become more and more resilient and more significant. So what we see from the as a state on top to the to be state that on an industrial scale we'll have to follow is that everything, all the building constructs, everything is now almost independent and automated. So we don't need any manual controls to a major extent when we think of scaling it. It's more about self-service model design. It's more about accessing it globally. So all these automation checkpoints, what it has predominantly done is that it has predominantly helped us in building out a wireframe for one time configuration. And once it is done on all these stages, it could be leveraged every time. So maximum what we saw amongst the sampled use cases for a lot of clients that I've been a part of is that there were configurational drifts or operational challenges when we had to scale it into multiple environments, which when we do not think through the whole solution. But when it is done through an automated way, it gives you the impact of your changes much proactively. So you can think through before implementing it. And that's a wonderful industrial scope, I may put it. If we see right now with the implementation of a DevSecOps model of doing deliveries, the build and release management portfolio is much seamless. It's much controlled, and the drift management, all these things are much less and much better governed. When we talk about building up a model of AI ops for smoother operations or a continuous feedback chain, what we see is that we are moving to a world of predictive and proactive operational management. We don't have to be a reactive firefighter to bring our applications with minimal downtime. Either there should be no downtime, or there should be something which we have foreseen much earlier than it has actually happened. So this is how on an industrial level, this model of changing operations and making it much more outcome driven has helped. And what exactly it takes from a future node is that what we see on the screen. So a huge chunk of the way operations was done traditionally, build out of data centers, build out of key capabilities on top of it, build out of application inventories on top of the data set. What we kind of saw is that this is not just the correct way. If we can somehow offload a lot of this maintainability aspect of the blue zones, and because of the entry of our cloud leaders, the platform of future was seen. So it's just the core business values that we should be worried about, and that's what we are deploying. Any organizations would be much happier to have that, and that's how the no-ops model is to be achieved. So if we are living for the future, and the platform of the future that we see is much more enabler for organizations who are just focused on building out business applications and just leveraging it on the base abstracted platform, it gives us much more agility to build out a better working world, a better world for our businesses, a great client-based driven innovation. And this is just gonna get fine-grained, much forward in terms of how transformation has happened in the whole aspect of operational models. So with that, what I would like to conclude is the way this transformation of operations is carried out these days. We are going into a stage where much of the organizations are want to look forward to a development-based model, where everything that we carry in terms of a platform or an operational work on the platform, or maybe a development aspect completely siloed, is just going to get merged into a single mindset of doing development of business use cases, and rest everything is to be maintained at a much abstracted level, which is going to be a less overhead for organizations, and that's going to give them a confidence of almost minimalistic ops, maintaining similar performance, or a no ops model in existence. With that thought, I'll conclude this session. I'm very much happy to talk to you on each of these blocks if need be, on details, or if you want a quick sneak peek of the white paper, just feel free to shoot me out an email on the email handle mentioned. I'll be more than happy to connect with you all on LinkedIn. I'm much more active there. So hope it was quite informative for you, and looking forward to your questions and responding to it. Looking for as in what I can say at the end, as we indeed had a great year so far. Hopefully the rest of 2020 is going to be much more digital, and you enjoy the rest of the summit with greater sessions that is lined up for you. Good luck and have a great day. Thank you.